I had a great childhood growing up on a council estate in the sunny Hertfordshire town of Stevenage, which, if you've ever visited, you will know has a god-awful town centre that, due to preservation orders or something, is firmly stuck in the 1950s. One thing it did have going for it back in the 1980s, though, was a place to buy computer games. We had an independent shop right where the bus stop used to be, just about seen here in this home video taken around 1986. Stalls in an indoor market, W.H. Smith's, Woolworths, and what feels unusual now, Boots the Chemist. Boots back then was a very different beast. They had toys, games, music, movies, and of course computer games. It was also a cut through to the indoor market too, which was located behind it, although as you can see from these doors now, they are not used anymore, probably due to the rise of shoplifters because, yeah, we never did anything like that back in the day. Boots back then had a counter at the back of the store, located round about here, just for the sound and vision department. That was often staffed by, shall we say, older ladies. I don't know why they did that, but I do remember this fact for one particular reason that is coming up very soon. Now, money was tight at 13-14 years old. Pocket money was around about £1 a week, which was supplemented by the occasional time I would help a mate on his paper round. So games battled with music for the coins in our pockets. I could save up for 2 weeks and buy a 7-inch single for around £1.40, £1.45, save the 60 odd p and buy another single the next week. 2 weeks would also get me a budget Spectrum game, which were mainly priced at £1.99. But if I wanted a top tier full price game which started at around £8 or so, I was looking at a month and a half of saving. No magazines, no music, no sweets, nothing, for 8 whole weeks. So what to do? Well, obviously piracy was popular, but even with the network of Spectrum owners we had, it would not always guarantee new titles. Games got harder to copy. You usually had a small window of opportunity around a mate's of a mate's house if you wanted the best possible chance of getting a working copy by using an original cassette as your master. Nicking games wasn't even on our radar. We were too honest for that. Plus the cassettes were often kept behind the cash desk for any scallywags that weren't as honest as us. The only fair game on the stealing front were pick and mix sweets that had fallen on the floor at Woolworths. There was some unwritten rule that they were good to be stuffed into our pockets, handed down in Stevenage folklore perhaps.
Lucky dips, get the grips.
There's no pick and mix like Woolworths' new pick and mix.
Yeah.
As an example of how honest I was, I once accidentally nicked a Fangoria magazine that was stuck inside a heavier than normal Beano comic. I was genuinely mortified when I realised what had happened. That Fangoria magazine was almost mythic to me. All that horror content I wasn't supposed to see really stuck with me for years after. So, full prices were largely out of reach. Ocean Software, under their Imagine label, had released a game the year before, which was a port of Kishimoto's, who later went on to do Double Dragon, coin-up hit for Taito, simply named Renegade. The unique graphic styling of the ZX Spectrum version by the well-established coding and graphic pairing of Mike Lamb and Ronnie Fowles was a big hit with me and my Spectrum playing friends. So when a sequel was announced with the possibility of playing 2 players, Target Renegade as it was to be named, was a must-have game. Renegade had reviewed quite well, not quite making a crush smash at 89%, which was mainly down to it being easily completed. They did mark the graphics down in my opinion too after lauding them throughout the whole review, so the overall score felt low. The same can be said for Target also, but at least it crept into crush smash territory just. But look at those screenshots. I mean, just look at them. The same team had worked on this one initially, with Ronnie Fowles leaving Ocean partway through the project to be replaced by Dawn Drake. Gary Biasillo, I'm sorry Gary if I've got your surname wrong, excellent 128K melancholic soundtrack which differs from the more jolly soundtrack of the original game, adds to the drama and really makes this a worthy sequel indeed. Bob Wakelin's artwork that took inspiration from a Teach Karate book by Joe Lewis also added to the must-have, gotta-have feeling for this holy grail. So, with no copies to borrow, no money to buy, what did we do to get this glorious feat of ZX Spectrum programming? Well, somehow, the price of the Target Renegade box, in Boots, had miraculously changed from £7.95 to £1.99. Now, I've no idea how this had happened, but we took the discounted game to the older members of staff to check that the price was right. Now, this was a little bit before barcode scanning had reached the old dears at the back of the store, and we knew that they didn't know a Target Renegade from a BMX simulator. And consequently, they happily handed over the Target Renegade cassette with our receipt for our £2 pocket money. Happy days. Once we swiftly left the store with our newly discounted game, it was time to get the bus home quick sharpish, just in case anyone changed their mind. The journey home felt like an age as we were itching to play our newly purchased game. Target Renegade is an unusual game. Renegade was an arcade conversion, but when Ocean acquired the rights to make the home computer versions, they also acquired the option to make follow-up home computer only sequels. With this second game, certainly with the ZX Spectrum version anyways, it was very much if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but certainly improve the thing. More screens per level, albeit not as detailed as its predecessor's 3 flip screens per level, but it does mean more baddies to fight. No end of level bosses either here as per Renegade, but you do get Mr. Big at the end, and even dogs to contend with. Weapons are added too, which honestly makes the game so much more fun. Swing and knock over a few bad guys with a sledgehammer, and admit how utterly satisfying it all is. 2 players is where it all really shines though. Me and my partner in crime had hours of fun teaming up together, one on keyboard and the other on Kempston, attempting to get to Mr. Big. This is the game Double Dragon should have been, certainly here on the ZX Spectrum. Yes, there were still things I preferred about the original, like the ability to knock bad guys off the end of platforms, and some of the awesome bosses like Big Bertha charging at you when you fight her badass whip-holding ladies. But Target Renegade is longer, harder, especially the solo games, and generally more fun. Crash may have underscored it, but Sinclair User were much more on point with their definitely deserved 10 out of 10 review, which rightly heaps praise on the Spectrum game that still plays and looks just as good nearly 40 years later. But what about the others? Well, before we make this video an 8-bit battle member, let's look at the only other port outside the 3 big home computer versions available in the UK. The rather weird 1990 port to the NES, which, although now licensed by Ocean, was published back by Taito and programmed by Software Creations. And you've got to ask why really. Here it's just another poor looking Double Dragon wannabe, but terribly only one player. You can't move beyond the screen you're on until all the bad guys are taken out. When you die, the game just abruptly ends. There's this weird glitchy disappearing sprites thing all over the place. It's really not good. I guess it's fairly close to the look and feel of the original Renegade, but nothing like the ZX Spectrum sequel. But this got me wondering, am I just spoilt by the Speccy version? I mean, surely the Commodore 64 and CPC versions more than match up. Well, let's look at the Commodore 64 version first, and yeah, I'm not so sure. Firstly, the positives. Gary's excellent soundtrack sounds terrific here, simply beautiful to listen to. John Palmer and Martin McDonald's graphics are also top notch. The Rambo-esque main character sprite is terrific, as are the backdrops and the bad guys. It all moves at a nice pace, certainly slower than the NES version, which is a good thing. So what's the problem then? Well, firstly, it's just one player. A big draw of this sequel on the Speccy was the 2-player element, and that's missing completely here. There's not that many baddies on screen at the same time, and most importantly, the controls suck. Well, they do for me anyways. Now, I'm not saying that the controls are going to be horrible for everyone, but being used to the mechanics of the Spectrum version, I found this one fairly limited. As soon as I got a weapon, I was attacked and often lost it again. I couldn't stand still and use it either, which was annoying. The kicks for the bike riders seemed very hit and miss, and the limited baddies seemed to be on your arse very quickly here. I had a few goes and really struggled to get past this first level. It became frustrating way too quickly. If this is the only port you played, you might feel differently. Maybe even play the Spectrum one and find it too clunky and slow, and I guess that would be fair, but I can't get past the yucky mechanics here. It's not a bad game as such, but it could have been so much more, with an additional player and an easier control method. Although Zap Magazine's 84% seems a tad high, I do have to agree with some of the comments here. First impressions are very off-putting. The action appears hopelessly difficult since frustratingly precise and sometimes illogical timing is required to produce results. Getting caught, garroted and beaten up by thugs time and time again creates frustration beyond belief. Not a truer word said with my experience of the game, but I'd be interested to know your experiences with playing this one. Onto the CPC version now, and it's instantly obvious that the same team are involved making this one. What's nice is that they haven't just lifted and shifted the Speccy version, but used the strengths that the CPC had. What you get is a bright and colourful experience with definitely more arcade-like graphics with all the Spectrum gameplay. It plays almost exactly the same as the Speccy one, and even on my first go, my experience with playing the Spectrum version got me to the end of level 3. There's a 2-player option here too, which is great, and this surely becomes a CPC beat 'em up classic, no? Amstrad Action kind of went down the same route as Crash. Great fun to play, especially 2-player, but a little repetitive, albeit graphically excellent. Lots of praise heaped on it, but maybe that repetitiveness they disliked so much marked it down into the late 80s. Which is a shame because this is still hugely playable today, and certainly a surprise for me on how good it actually is. Now, if you haven't seen any of my long-running 8-bit battle videos, I give 3 points to the winning version, 2 points to the second one, and 1 point to the last one. I'm hoping after about 100 reviews, we'll find which one of the three had the greatest games. So, when coming up with who gets the points for the home computers today, I don't think anyone can disagree with the Commodore 64 version coming last. There's no 2-player option, and fiddly controls overshadow its graphical excellence, as style over substance is clearly not a good thing here. As for the winner and runner-up, well, this was closer than I anticipated. The CPC version is way better than I expected. It has everything you could expect this version to have if you owned the 12-foot home micro from Mr. Sugar. The Spectrum version just has that something about it though. Maybe it's my rose-tinted nostalgia goggles winning the day for it, but I don't know, it looks cleaner with its transparent sprites, which certainly isn't always the case with Speccy games. Everything just feels more defined, more detailed, and less blocky than the CPC version. But if that was your go-to back in the late 80s, I wouldn't begrudge you disagreeing with me on this one. Please let me know in the comments your experience of any of these three versions, as I play you out with some of the best bits of the Speccy version, as it's in my top 3 favourite games of the 80s, and what better way to show it off with one of my top 3 favourite songs of the 80s. And also stick around to the end to see the scores in the 8-bit battle series after 11 rounds. And as always, thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you all on the next one. Bye for now.
you mad, too unstable, kicking in chairs and knocking down tables in a restaurant in a West End town. Call the police, there's a madman around, running down underground to a dive bar in a West End town. In a West End town, a dead end world, the East End boys and West End girls. In a West End town, a dead end world, the East End boys and West End girls. West End girls. Too many shadows, whispering voices, faces on posters, too many choices. If, when, why, what, how much have you got? Have you got it, do you get it? If so, how often? Which do you choose, a hard or soft option?